When we only settle at what we have heard or seen, we deny ourselves the fullness of what God has intended. Welcome to Word of Wisdom, a podcast that seeks to rebuild and restore the true image of God in you by drawing wisdom from the Scriptures and giving practical insights for their application. I'm your host, Briant Lubanga, ready to journey with you. Last week we talked about seeing as the second interaction level. Today we look at the third level, which is looking upon. 1 John chapter 1 verse 1 says, "That which was from the beginning, which we have heard, which we have seen with our eyes, and then that which we have looked upon." Looking upon is a more intentional and focused posture. It's a contemplative examination of what one has seen in order to deepen their understanding and strengthen their faith in it. In Luke chapter 17, when Jesus entered a certain village, he met 10 leprous men that stood afar off. They lifted their voices and asked Jesus to have mercy on them. They must have heard about Jesus for them to know they can cry out to him for healing. Verse 12 states that the lepers were standing afar off. This means beyond just hearing about Jesus, they had an opportunity to see him, albeit from afar. To this point, their interaction was limited to the first two levels, hearing and seeing. In verse 14, Jesus commanded them to go show themselves to the priests. While on their way, they were healed. When one of them saw that he was healed, he turned back and fell at Jesus' feet to give thanks. Unlike the first time where they saw Jesus from afar, he came at a much closer proximity with him by falling at his feet, something the 9 did not experience. Jesus' words directed to him became more personal and exceeded his healing experience to being made whole. His interaction was deliberate and conscious. It was from a personal revelation and conviction of who Jesus was. To him, Jesus was not an ordinary healer. This revelation deepened his interaction with the Word. In John chapter 4 verse 40, when the Samaritans came to Jesus, they not only saw him from afar, but had closer interaction as they drew near to talk to him. They had the opportunity to scrutinize and analyze him in their conversations to know whether he is someone they can trust and thereafter deepen their relationship with him. It's only after their conversations that they invited him to stay over for 2 more days. Their decision to invite him into the city was not based on the information they had earlier received from the woman, even though it was true. They made conclusions based on what they had heard for themselves. Verse 42 says, "For we have heard for ourselves and know that this is indeed the Christ." These personal conversations with Christ at the well are what built their faith in him. Looking upon something means you are at a close proximity. Unlike seeing, where it may be at a distance or at a glance, looking upon involves coming closer to examine what you had seen in order to appreciate it. When looking upon, you concentrate and focus on one thing. You shut your ears and eyes from every form of distraction. Looking upon means deepening the interaction through intentional scrutiny in order to internalize and make a more informed analysis from the observation. It's one thing to hear and see a good word, but fail to deepen your interaction with it. deepening of interaction is not limited to only a few. We all have the privilege of access into the truths in the Word. When we only settle at what we have heard or seen, we deny ourselves the fullness of what God has intended. All the lepers were healed, but only the one who returned was made whole. Wholeness for him meant his toes and fingers grew back, meaning he was able to fully function and advance in that which he was called to do. For the rest, they only were healed but didn't have their toes and fingers growing back. Remember, when you only get satisfied with what you have heard or seen, you miss out on experiencing the fullness of what God has intended for you.